I want you all here to visualize something. Imagine you're on a tiny island. There are no natural resources, no educated labor, no prospects, and not even a national identity. More than 2/3 of the population are living in slums. The island is definitely headed for doom and obscurity. Toastmasters and guests, let me ask you a question. What do you think of when I say the word miracle? Well, most of you here would probably associate it with some supernatural phenomena or some unexplainable act like Superman flying or the Flash running fast. Well, I associate it with a single city, Singapore. The island I just described was Singapore just 6 decades ago. For most of the young people here, Singapore is a titan. Singapore is a metropolis of finance, tech, and tourism. Well, it was not so. It was not so just 5 decades back. To see how Singapore became the way it is, let's go back in time. The Second World War has just ended. Singapore, being a part of the British colony, had faced brutal aggression from the Japanese. Bombs turned buildings to rubble, streets were lined up with the dead, fear gripped the people. There was unrest. Following the events of World War II, the British decided to retreat from the island because of public pressure. In 1959, Singapore became a part of Federation of Malaya, which includes the current day Malaysia. Singapore was officially free of the British. Well, historically, Singapore was a free trade port. The British used it to trade tea, opium, and other substances. Naturally, it had become a den for gambling dens, opium gangs, and prostitution. The people who made Singapore their home were traders, merchants, pirates, and hooligans. There was a crisis. Their nationality had no identity. The Federation of Malaya that was recently formed was ruled by Malayans who disregarded Singaporeans, and this caused conflicts and hostility amongst each other. Singapore soon was ejected and gained its independence. The Prime Minister, who was a visionary, a leader chosen by the people, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, famously stated in his interview, the day after they gained independence, it is a moment of anguish for me. For all my life, I believed in the Malaysian urgent. He was filled with tears in his eyes, uncontrollable, unconsolable. Well, they decided to not go down without a fight. Singapore and its leaders began its development. They started with strict laws. Anyone caught doing illegal activities were given harsh punishments, including executions. Individual freedoms were curtailed. Freedom of speech was non-existent. Well, some of you might think this was extreme, but here's the catch: it worked. The rampant crime reduced. The national identity crisis was solved, and eventually they started bringing in investment, foreign capital. Singapore, being a free trade port, had no taxes. Well, the government continued that. Why change something that's not broken? Singapore Singapore started manufacturing oil refineries and manufacturing factories. Workers were given labor jobs in these manufacturing factories that were given labor jobs in these factories, and compulsory taxes and central provident fund was a way to ensure government subsidized housing. Compulsory taxes ensured that resources were available for the government, and the Central Provident Fund ensured accessible and sustainable homes for the people. Lee Kuan Yew soon became known as the benevolent dictator. Over time, Singapore and its leadership also realized that manufacturing cannot be its main turnover. Well, there's only so much they can do with the amount of land they have. How many factories do you think they can put up? Do you think they can compete with China? Do you think they can compete with India? They realized this and they used the Central Provident Fund that they had previously used. They used it to build premier institutes that introduced skilled labor in the market in the form of doctors, engineers, and innovators. As a result, instead of fading into obscurity when compared to China, Vietnam, India, Bangladesh, and all these mammoths of manufacturing, they became a powerhouse of innovation and entrepreneurship. Lee Kuan Yew finally, in the year 1990, resigned as the Prime Minister after serving Singapore for 35 years as the Prime Minister. But he was still an important role, a senior advisor until the year 2004. Today, Singapore is one of the healthiest, happiest, and one of the richest countries in the world. It is because of one man's vision. And this shows how one man changed the entire trajectory and the landscape of the country. Singapore is a miracle, and that was my purpose. Back to